I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Yeah, everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.
Hey, welcome to HoopSpeak Live. I'm your host, Beckley Mason. We've got a very special show to you today. 2 guests instead of 1. We're going to have Rob Mahoney from SI and also Brett Koremenos. But first, let me introduce our co-host, Zach Harper. Zach, it might interest you to know that today's HoopSpeak is brought to you by the Minnesota Timberwolves Injury Ward. With just added a new wing to house all the people whose feet are falling off.
Pretty sure I sprained my wrist writing my recap last night, so I'm also day to day.
Yeah, what is going on there? They keep winning at least, but they might not have anyone to play in about a week.
Well, that's the thing, is that the more guys that get injured, the better they are. I think the key the whole time has been Malcolm Lee. Get him on the court and you'll win.
Well, that's just an axiom of the NBA there. All right, we've got so much to talk about today. Let's just bring on the, I would say, the preeminent Mike D'Antoni obsessive of the internet, Brett Koremenos, who's going to have some Dan-analysis.
I prefer to be called an expert. It's much less. Oh no, Bane got me.
All right. Well, okay. So first, I think it's a good idea to talk about sort of just what D'Antoni's offense really is. You know, a lot of people have written many conflicting things. To you, what is the essence of D'Antoni's offense that can apply to teams regardless of roster?
Well, I think what it is just it comes from Europe, and he played over there, he coached over there. So I mean, really, the essence is ball movement. It's pick and rolls. It is spreading the floor, but like the one thing you have to remember is that it doesn't always need to stretch forward. Like when you're in Europe, I mean, we make a lot of jokes. We take pot shots at a lot of guys in the NBA. Believe me, when you go over and watch some of these European games, there are some dudes that just can't flat out play. So this wouldn't be like the first time that D'Antoni has 2 non-shooting bigs in his system like this, I'm guessing, or at least he's never. It's not like he hasn't ever encountered it before. And even when the Suns, went to the 2010 when they went to the Western Conference Finals, like they played for stretches, Robin Lopez and Stoudemire together. Obviously, Channing Frye was usually the closing lineup in there to kind of give them that spread look. But there are ways around it. It isn't ideal. It might put the cap on how efficient they can be. But for the most part, I mean, it is essentially still the same type of concept. Spread the floor, keep the lane clear, run high volume pick and rolls, move the basketball.
So high volume pick and rolls, everyone thinks of Steve Nash. Is Steve Nash good anymore in a way that you want to be having him run the offense the whole time? D'Antoni and Nash, I know, hold special places in your heart. Are you a little worried about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily worried. I mean, my job isn't affected by it, so I don't really get worried about it. Is it disheartening to maybe think that the Nash that we have all come to enjoy is done? Yeah, I think the Roddy Wilbon deal was kind of like a warning sign where you're like, oh crap, maybe this is the end for him. But I don't know. I mean, we've talked. I know you and I have talked a little bit off air. I almost thought that I haven't been one of the people clamoring for them to run more pick and rolls with Nash because I'm not sure he can carry an offense anymore. Guys can get into him. There are athletic guards that can pressure him up the court. They can take the team out of the system like that. That's really dependent on him. I won't know. I won't want to say he's done, but is he done being the Nash that we know? I would say the evidence is kind of mounting that direction.
Brett, what about giving Kobe Bryant the responsibility to run pick and rolls? He does score very well out of pick and rolls, very efficiently. He has a obviously a good handle, good ability to pass the ball. Is that a way to maybe bridge the age factor with Nash, and maybe he can't shoulder so much of the load anymore? Like, give Kobe some responsibility to run the offense?
Well, I'm starting to think that you broke into my Google Docs and saw my piece that I just filed with Grantland. But actually, yeah, that is something that I mentioned. I think you're right on, man. I think Kobe does have the skills to be a good pick and roll player. We just never seen it before. He's always been a really good ISO guy. He's been, working. He does his work at the elbow, does his work on the wing. He's just never been asked, because the triangle, the pick and rolls usually come on the side, or they come as bailouts from the corner. That's really the only areas that he got. It's not emphasized. But to say, I think that is going to be the remedy at some points, especially if Nash has multiple relapses with injury, is, using the system, but having Bryant be the guy that's getting all the pick and rolls. Because, like you said, he can make all the passes, he can dribble, he can shoot, he can use his body well. I think it's a perfect thing for him at his age, where it's getting harder and harder for him to create separation in those isolations and post ups. I think it's the perfect thing is put him in ball screens and just kind of let him be that main creator.
Yeah, one thing I wrote a little bit about Kobe for this morning, and the thing I noticed when I went back and looked at all his tape was how much more reliant, and I mean this in a good way, he was being on his teammates to help him get good opportunities. So, attacking closeouts and coming off screens to get his posts up. Obviously, he's still going to take OJ Mayo into the block and get to his spot 8 feet from the rim and go up and hit that shot. But he's running more pick and rolls and he's doing those things. So I think you're right that Kobe, his shots are down, but he's taking better shots, and part of that is because he is using his teammates a little more.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think, with him, he's so obsessed with winning that sometimes logic eventually does creep in. And I think he is understanding, I guess, in terms of his own mortality in a way, that he's getting older and he does need to rely. He can't take over a game for 30, 35 minutes at a time anymore. He definitely needs to involve others.
What about Pau Gasol as the Boris Diaw, and you got Ron Artest as Sean Marion? I mean, we just automatically say, hey, how can the Suns be the Lakers? How can the Lakers be the Suns? It feels like they do have similar parts as before. I mean, if you put Pau Gasol in the Boris Diaw role, that's a great fit. Dwight Howard is great rolling to the basket on pick and rolls, and then Ron Artest, he doesn't really do anything well anymore. But how does the Pau Gasol factor into what D'Antoni's going to do?
Well, I think what, sorry for my feed, it kind of cut in and out a little bit on me, Zach, but I think generally, when you talk about the Gasol fit, I think it's interesting because he isn't, he is center. I think everybody has agreement on one thing. Beckley said it, Zach said it, everybody on Twitter has said it. They have two centers, but I think game is so malleable that you can be so creative with him that you can run any system you want. It's just a matter of, does it put him in a spot to be the most effective that he can be? So, it's definitely something that you have to just kind of leave up to D'Antoni and just see how creative he can actually be with him.
Nice. All right, Brett. Well, hopefully that wasn't cutting out in and out for everyone else, but it was really awesome to have you. Go check him out on Grantland. He's got the full breakdown. Brett could talk for about an hour straight with no Bretts about D'Antoni, so keep tabs on him on Twitter also. And but we got to get to our next guest. We got a lot to do. Thanks for coming on, Brett.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, that was Brett Koremenos from HoopSpeak and Grantland and the internets and Twitters. Next, we have a guy who has written just about everywhere online, and now he's got a home at Sports Illustrated. Friend of the show, Rob Mahoney.
I think friend is a strong word. I mean, I don't like you guys that much.
Acquaintance of the show, Rob Mahoney.
Next door neighbor of the show, something, use your magic. Oh,
Oh, wow.
That's a young Rob there.
Wait, I thought that was me on the left.
You do have the same hat. Is that a hat? Do-rag? Ugh. Anyway.
Whatever.
Well, we filter this through 3 layers of whiteness to this conversation. You have had an interesting... So getting to be a fan of a Rick Carlisle coach team is a really awesome experience, even when they're not a really good team. Talk about just watching and embracing this year's squad.
Yeah, I mean, this year's team is probably the closest thing Carlisle has had to that completely broken Pacers squad after the brawl, where he just had to cobble these weird pieces together, make things work without their best players. I mean, if you think back, that's when Jermaine O'Neal was such a dominant defensive player. They were missing Ron Artest, they're missing Steven Jackson, and with this team, they're missing Dirk, who obviously is so crucial to their offense, and they're kind of having, they're forced to running a lot without him. They're forced to scrapping through possessions without him. And then not only missing him, but Sean Marion, who is this team's most versatile defensive player and was really the reason why they were able to, win the 2011 title and do so well in that playoff run. So missing those 2 guys, I mean, those are your 2 best players on both sides of the ball. And the fact that he was even able to get this team to compete for the first couple of games, I think is impressive in itself. But then inevitably you're going to have games like you did last night against the Timberwolves where it's just everything goes to hell and it's completely sloppy. And there's an unrecognizable basketball team. But that's kind of the hand he was dealt.
Rob, I've talked a lot of crap about O.J. Mayo over the years because I'm just not crazy about his game. Aside from last night, he's been a little bit of all right this season to start out, shooting 60% from 3, leading the team in scoring. What has changed? Is he playing the same way, or is he just making shots now?
It's a little of both. I mean, some of it is... I think Lionel Holland's offense can make any player look really, really bad who's not a post player. Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol look great. Tony Allen even looks great when he, hit the off-ball movement there. But when you're a shooter or a ball-dominant player, you're just not going to look very good for the Grizzlies. I mean, look at Jared Bayless right now. I mean, he's doing some good things, but his game looks horrible. And, when you look at the way Mayo's been able to thrive, a lot of it is transition stuff. He's been one of the Mavs, leak-out guys, being that, he's not a particularly good rebounder, and they've kind of designated him in that Marion role, almost like you had in Phoenix, where he's the guy who's leaking out on the break. I think a lot of his points are coming in transition, which helps, kind of buoy that efficiency. But the three-point shooting, a lot of it is just shot selection. Not many of those attempts are coming off the dribble. A lot of it's spot-up stuff. Carlisle's, the spacing of his system is great, and you can see it, carry on to the efficiency of Chris Kaman, to Elton Brand and Brandon Wright. I mean, even with the talent that they have right now, they're still able to space the floor really well. The issues they're having are just, they don't have the ability to execute or the skills to execute right now.
Yeah, there's a lack of talent there, I guess. But what always strikes me watching this team is the sense of purpose, possession to possession. Every time there's a pass, it seems like the person who gave up the ball knows exactly what they're supposed to do next, what the trigger is, where to screen, and there's a lot of new players. It's just a really impressive coaching job.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And then when you look at the way those Mavs teams play, where pretty much every player on the floor has some sense of what's going on. They don't panic when they catch the ball out of position. You really get a good feel of why Carlisle doesn't like playing players like Rodrigo Bois, because when he catches the ball, the entire thing goes sideways. And Dominique Jones is a little of the same way. And the young players that Carlisle does play, guys like Brandon Wright, are ones who aren't very flappable, or even Jay Crowder. It's kind of amazing to me that people gave up on Wright so quickly, or that the Mavs were even able to get him for the minimum in the first place. I know he was injured. I know there are all those concerns about his game. He's not a great jump shooter, but he's also, not a great back to the basket player. But he's just so great with that in-between utility, and Carlisle's offense is great at exploiting those kinds of players.
Rob, last night Bernard James came in for limited minutes, and I like what he's done. It's kind of an alternative to Elton Brand at times, and he's one of the few guys that can actually be a pro athlete and say, I'm a soldier out there. What do you think? Does he have any kind of future moving towards the playoff push, like getting heavy minutes in the rotation? Because he is a pretty decent big man.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lot more mobile than I thought he was going to be. Watching him in college, I mean, some of it's just honestly the college game makes everyone look really slow, except for those standout athletes. And he's a guy who he is a big body. He can move around a little bit. I've been really impressed with his effort rebounding. Out of position stuff. Getting out of his box out stance, going across the court, stealing a rebound from somebody. That's kind of the area where he's thrived, and little putback opportunities here and there. But I don't think there's very much of a reason to play him over Brand, over a huge chunk of minutes, and that's kind of been one of the weird quirks in Rick Carlisle's rotation so far, especially when, as you saw last year, Brand is just such a smart defender, and he was the guy who the Mavs were really counting on to kind of fill in that role for them, whether it was Tyson Chandler in the past or Brendan Haywood in the past. The guy's going to clog up space in the middle. Just do those little things, take one step in the right direction to deter penetration. Those little things that Brandon Wright really can't do, and that James really can't do right now. He's kind of in a weird spot because I think he's 27 years old and he's a rookie, so he doesn't have a lot of pro experience. But at the same time, he's not going to get that much better than he is. So I think he'll probably be kind of what we saw last night, spot minutes, but maybe even less than that.
All right, I want to talk about a post that you did that inspired some stuff that had been bouncing around in my noggin about how Durant is playing and sort of how fun it is to watch him take such a purposeful look at his game and decide, okay, here's how I want to play now. Kind of go over what you've seen there.
I mean, the interesting thing with players like Durant is, you can look at any player who makes any kind of leap, whether it's as a rebounder or a playmaker or whatever, and those individual stat jumps are great. I mean, it's like, fantasy basketball fodder. It's great for, looking through their basketball reference page, seeing that this guy made such a huge improvement. But with Durant, I think what stands out most is just how much that could potentially improve the Thunder. This isn't just a guy who's improving his game and happens to make his team a little bit better. I mean, this is the kind of thing, and especially on the way he's improved on the boards, this is exactly what he needs to do in order for Scott Brooks to really play the Thunder's best lineups, which don't include Kendrick Perkins, and in most cases don't include Nick Collison. I mean, you want Durant at the 4, you want to have a perimeter defender like Topo on the floor, and you want to have Kevin Martin or Russell Westbrook out there to help create points. And so, given that Durant is such a versatile offensive player now and can do such a good job, I'm sorry. Can we acknowledge that happened and not just let it drift off into the internet for a second?
Right now is my apartment hasn't been cleaned in I think like years, and I've moved here like a few months ago. We're finally getting a service to come clean it, and she's been here for over like 7 hours. This is how disgusting it was, and I think she was just putting some stuff back on my desk.
Okay, now that we got that out of the way. But yeah, I mean, it's just the way that it could ultimately convince Scott Brooks to do what everyone has wanted him to do for so long, I think is what is really the noteworthy element of Durant's evolution.
All right, I want to talk about something specifically here that I want to bounce this theory off of you and see what you guys think. So given what Rob's written and what we've observed from Durant, do we think that the Harden trade opened up certain opportunities for Durant to, not the rebounding aside, being more of a playmaker, kind of the point guard Durant? When Durant's on the court with Martin, his job is still to be the playmaker, whereas he kind of got to be in Martin's role when he played sometimes with Harden. I think it's an interesting question of, is this move going to allow Durant to max out in ways that maybe he couldn't have with Harden still in the fold?
I mean, I think it'll definitely allow him to exercise those skills more frequently. But I mean, the thing with him is you almost wish that we had gotten a couple games with him and Harden again together this season just to see what his role would have been. Because there are a lot of times where Durant's, basically being a point guard, bringing it up from the opposite baseline like a point guard would. Yeah. And you have to think with those kinds of quirks worked into Scott Brooks' strategy, and with the way that Durant is reading the next level, the next level defense, these aren't things that just like happened, as the Harden trade evolved. These were premeditated movements in the way the Thunder were evolving. And so it would be interesting to see how much the Thunder would stick to that, having Harden as an alternative, because it's definitely kind of, increase the sense of urgency there in terms of having Durant as more of a creator.
I'm going to ask a question that's probably really stupid, but I want to see what you think. Is it necessarily the right thing for Durant to evolve into this kind of player when he was so good at what he was last year? I mean, do you think in a way this could detract from what he's so good at, which is scoring the basketball in a very efficient way, where maybe that's the role you would rather have him in instead of trying to increase the chances that he's getting banged around and he's turning the ball over? I just wonder, I just wonder if this is a thing that is a definite, needed improvement in his game that was already so good.
I mean, I don't think it's guaranteed at all that this is going to make the Thunder a better offense in terms of having Durant run a lot of possessions as the playmaker. I mean, it's still definitely experimented at this point, and we're kind of seeing the kinds of things he can do, but we're banking it more on the potential of what he could do in a couple months or a couple years with these kinds of skills. But yeah, I mean, I don't think, how do you improve on an offense that was already that efficient and already that good with him being a primary scorer, with just being kind of a catch and shoot guy or a catch and drive guy? I don't think there's any given at all that they're going to be a better team for it. But I do think it opens up some interesting possibilities. And plus, having him experiment with things like that, the true scoring is always going to be his default. Like, you give that guy the ball, he wants to shoot it. And so if things don't work out, it's not going to be hard to shift back into that kind of mindset, because that's just kind of the way he is as a player. Versus, these are kinds of more, this is a more deliberate process in terms of evolving him as a playmaker.
Right, and I think that you saw in the Thunder series in the finals when he couldn't get his shot going, or he couldn't, just be an offensive scoring weapon. He looked like he didn't really know how to contribute, or not that he didn't know how, but he wasn't comfortable. It wasn't his role to then say, okay, screw it, like, I'm going to be the 6'11" point guard here. So I think that, making him a more complete player, and I wonder if he's going to, is good, and I wonder if he's going to be, LeBron, when LeBron really started, I thought, becoming a more dominant player, his statistical jumps weren't that large. And I wonder if, if his rebounding comes down and maybe he's only getting a half rebound more, or a rebound more than he was last year. I still think that it's going to be obvious, kind of to the old eye test, how much more of an imprint he can put on the game.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's, the kind of thing where when you look at a player who jumps and assists, sometimes it's just, they're making better swing passes. Sometimes their shot selection improves, and so they're giving up the ball in better situations. But the numbers don't always shift that much. And so with Durant, especially on the glass, because if he's going to be asked to play more power forward minutes or more small forward minutes, that's ultimately going to have a pretty huge bearing on how those rebounding numbers shake out and who he's sharing the floor with, those kinds of things. But you can tell by the way he's boxing out, by the way he's being used in the offense, that this is really, really different from the way he's been used in the past 2 years.
Yep, and that is awesome for everyone who likes to see new and great things from. I still think the wild ride point guard Durant on the fast break is still like my favorite thing. I don't know how to exactly to explain it, but it looks like a locomotive that like parts are flying off of it, but like it's still going the same direction. And it's just crazy to watch him at full speed with his head up and the ball, shoulder dribble high. I mean, he's pumping that thing way up there.
It's almost like that famous, that Joakim Noah highlight where he catches that ball on the fast break. I mean, just seeing a guy that big and gangly, walking down the floor like a pack of wet spaghetti. I mean, it is something to behold, that's for sure.
All right, Rob. Anything to plug? Where can we find you all over the internet?
Yeah, I mean, nothing too much today. Just check out The Point Forward, nba.si.com, and check me out on Twitter if you want advice on how to wear your headband, especially the Stars and Stripes variety. And, check me out there.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right. We are going to do a quick round of audience questions here. I think this is a really interesting one. What would happen if Rudy Gay were put in a more favorable system for his game? He is a monster. He is a monster is not a question, technically, but what do you think about Rudy? Do you think that he's untapped potential? Do you think that he sort of just isn't quite that top tier player?
Yeah, I think he's about at his ceiling as a player, which is not a bad thing at all. He's really good. He's a lot. I mean, after he signed that max deal, everyone was saying, how do you give that guy that much money? And then he proved that it was actually a really smart decision. He's played incredible basketball, far beyond what he showed before the contract. I think that if you put him in a more favorable system, maybe I think he could score a lot more, but I don't know that it would be a more efficient game. And so, you worry about turning him to a small forward version of Monte Ellis at that point.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because to me, he has potential to be a every year all-star if he just was making more threes. Like if he was like, okay, I'm going to take 4.5 threes a game instead of 2.5, and they were going to be spot-up looks. I think that Holland's offense basically asks him to do one of two things. One will be, kind of like running pick and rolls, which isn't really his thing. And two is, if he's not coming off like a baseline cut where he's nice, is getting kind of the mellow isolations, the Kobe isolations, because let's face it, he's a 6'9", super long guy with a handle, a nice pull-up. I mean, it's sort of the old school idea of, okay, who's my best mismatch? Let's pound it. And more often than not, I mean, against 25 teams, Rudy Gay has like a physical mismatch. And so I think that a lot of his shots come out of these sort of, kind of the non-optimized situations for his game. Whereas if you were, in a, if he was in the Timberwolves system and he was coming off these high post rubs and he was, getting the ball on the move and with the floor moving, I think that he still could be a much better player. I'd also like to see him at the 4 some, just to make him like a really scary fast 4. I think that, I watched him guard Aldridge last year and I was like, wow, I mean, he's going toe-to-toe with him, blocking his fall away, and this is supposed to be a small forward.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that as I like him in the role of a stretch forward. We saw that a lot last year when Zach Randolph was down for most of the year, and I actually liked him in that role a lot better than I liked him, ISOing on the perimeter or running pick and rolls or anything like that.
All right, I'm going to bring this one on. Zach, you're going to have to take this because I literally cannot talk about him. I know like 4 things about him. 2 of them are that his first name is Malcolm and his last name is Lee. So go ahead, Zach.
He's played the last 2 games at significant minutes. He scored really well against Chicago, and last night he defended really well. He's just a guy that takes away space on defense incredibly well. He makes guys uncomfortable. Like if you were going to, I don't know, go watch a movie with Ron Artest, I feel like it would be a really uncomfortable experience. That's what Malcolm Lee does on defense. Like he takes away space, and he's so long. He's got I think a 6'10" reach for a guy that's 6'4", 6'5", and he's just knows how to make up for his height differential.
Right. Okay, well, there you go. We have now talked about Malcolm Lee. Last question before we get to Dagger Smash noted. Most surprising team so far, positive or negative? I'm still going with the Knicks. I think that they look great, and I did not expect that at all. So there you have it.
The Phoenix Suns have 4 wins, and there's no explanation for it at all.
Who have they beaten?
It doesn't matter. They have 4 wins.
Yeah, that is very surprising. Yeah, that was my surprise face. Good job, Phoenix. You're surprising. I can't watch them because their court is so bad. Like I literally can't look at it. It's really just terrible.
Yeah. No, it makes me physically ill to see it.
I'll have to find when they have a road game so I can check them out. All right, let's go to Dagger Smash noted. Okay, so my dagger is I've got a multi-pronged dagger here. One is that Kyle Lowry has the best true shooting percentage of guards who play more than 20 minutes a night, which is pretty amazing. The second one, though, is I found out in the span of 24 hours about Daniel Tony D'Antoni and Lance Stevenson, Lantz Stevenson, Lance Stevenson's little brother. It was like the most mind-blowing day of my life.
There was a point, I have it on a post on A Wolf Among Wolves. There was a point with Lance Stevenson in the Wolves-Pacers game where George Hill hits that ridiculous step-back 3 against Dante Cunningham to tie it. Lance Stevenson's on the bench. He stands up. While celebrating, he trips over Jeff Pendergraft, falls right in front of Frank Vogel. Vogel gets up because there's a timeout because the game's tied with like 2 seconds left. And Vogel just looks down like, what the hell are you doing at my feet? It's fantastic. I've got it frozen on video. If you go to wolfamongwolves.com, I think it's called Hilarity in the Wolves-Pacers game. My smash, Michael Beasley, one of my smash, I have two-pronged smash. One is I feel like Beckley is saying goodbye to it.
Yep.
And two, Michael Beasley has 106 points and 116 shot attempts so far. I think like 50 players in NBA history have had more shot attempts than points in a season, and I think he would be number 50. So here's hoping he keeps this up.
Yeah, I saw that Basketball Reference list, and it was like no one since 2006, 2007, and that was maybe Adam Morrison. So like he wasn't playing major minutes. So Beasley would be the first in like a while to be playing, starters, rotation minutes, and put up those sorts of numbers. James, I think, has our noted if he wants to pop in here. Peepin' James.
I do want to pop in. My note is about headbands, funnily enough. The Sixers were here in Toronto on Saturday, and as you know, everybody was wearing the American headbands, the Stars and Stripes headbands, and they wouldn't let Spencer Hawes wear his headband. And as a Canadian, we don't care. That's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wearing an American headband in Canada. But Canada's not going to riot over this. I don't understand it. And Spencer Hawes in the locker room pregame got in a huff and walked off and was like, "Are they even going to play our anthem?" And yeah, they played the anthem. It's just so stupid. I have no idea why they wouldn't let that happen. But that's the thing. That's my noted.
All right, that's a good noted. It should also be noted that James Herbert is a real deal sports writer, and you should read him on Hardwood Paroxysm. He's been doing a ton of really great game and profile studies, so check him out over there. Thanks to our two guests, Brett and Rob. Thank you to everybody who watched, and James for producing, Bane for the photoshopping, and Bane the Elder, Roger Bane. Why don't you just take us out? I
taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about who